Part 4 serves as the emotional and narrative culmination of the story. While parts 1, 2, 3 establish the tension, vulnerability, and budding connection between Alex and Emily, Part 4 resolves the immediate emotional conflict and sets up the story's romantic and dramatic climax. This part balances hope, tenderness, and suspense, giving the audience a satisfying yet anticipatory conclusion. Transition from intimacy to reflection. Part 4 begins after the loft scene, where Emily has found temporary shelter and emotional grounding with Alex. The physical and emotional intimacy established in Part 3 provides the foundation for this section. Unlike the prior tension of running and fear, Part 4 emphasizes reflection, realization, and emotional reconciliation. The story setting continues to play an important symbolic role. The rain has stopped. The streets glisten under streetlights, and the city feels calm. This reflects the emotional shift from chaos to clarity. The external environment mirrors internal resolution. Emily, though still facing uncertainty, begins to feel hope, agency, and empowerment. By using environmental cues, the narrative subtly reinforces the character arc, showing how external calm and internal clarity can coexist and signal a turning point in a story. Emily's emotional evolution. Part 4 showcases Emily's transformation, from fearful, desperate runaway to someone beginning to reclaim her emotional autonomy. Her reflection, I think. I can start over. I don't know where exactly, but maybe. I can start demonstrates several critical emotional developments. Acceptance of consequences. Emily is no longer paralyzed by fear or guilt. She acknowledges that running away was only the first step and that rebuilding her life is a gradual process. Empowerment. This moment signifies emotional empowerment. She understands she has choices and that leaving her wedding does not define her failure. It defines her courage, hope, and possibility. Her tentative optimism introduces a narrative shift from tension to potential growth, which is emotionally satisfying for the audience while keeping suspense for future developments. Emily's evolution resonates with viewers because it portrays a relatable journey of self-discovery, emphasizing that emotional courage and personal growth often come through struggle, reflection, and the support of others. Alex as emotional anchor. In Part 4, Alex's role continues as a calm, grounding presence. He reassures Emily, "You're not alone." Not anymore, which reinforces his function as both protector and emotional partner. This line carries several layers of meaning. Literal comfort. Emily is physically safe and emotionally supported in Alex's presence. Emotional stability. His calm assurance validates her choices and gives her the courage to face uncertainty. Foreshadowing of deeper connection. The simplicity of this moment masks the growing emotional and romantic tension. Alex's words create the foundation for deeper relational intimacy, suggesting a bond that could evolve beyond support and into love. This balance of gentle guidance and emotional connection is central to a mature, heartfelt romance narrative. Unlike impulsive love stories, Part 4 demonstrates how romance can emerge organically through care, trust, and shared vulnerability. Subtle romantic development, the loft scene, and quiet conversation in Part 4 highlight subtle but meaningful romantic cues, physical closeness, while the story remains non-explicit. The repeated motifs of proximity, hand-holding, shared space, and comforting gestures signal a growing emotional and romantic connection. Emotional intimacy. Romance is primarily expressed through shared vulnerability, empathy, and trust. The emotional depth between the characters conveys attraction more powerfully than physical gestures. Mutual respect. Both characters maintain boundaries while exploring emotional closeness. Emily's trust and Alex's protective restraint demonstrate respect, which is foundational for believable, mature romance. The narrative achieves slow-burning romance, appealing to audiences who value emotional realism and connection over instant gratification, or dramatic physicality. Climactic emotional tension Part 4 introduces a soft yet significant external conflict. Emily's phone buzzes, revealing a message from her fiancé. "Where are you? I need you." This cliffhanger introduces immediate tension despite the calm and warmth of the loft. It achieves several key narrative goals. Suspense. The audience immediately questions how Emily will respond. Will she confront her past or retreat further? This uncertainty drives engagement. Moral and emotional complexity. Emily's decision now involves weighing loyalty, personal freedom, and new attachments. The story illustrates that realistic romance and drama involve nuanced decisions, not simplistic happily ever after resolutions. Narrative stakes. Alex's involvement is now emotionally and narratively meaningful. His connection to Emily is no longer temporary or circumstantial. It is intertwined with her past, her choices, and her future, raising tension and investment for the audience. This cliffhanger is particularly effective because it balances emotional resolution with lingering suspense, leaving viewers satisfied yet eager for continuation. Themes and emotional resonance Part 4 reinforces and concludes several thematic threads from earlier parts while introducing future narrative possibilities. Hope and renewal. The title, A New Beginning, is literal and symbolic. Emily's flight and Alex's support represent the first steps toward rebuilding life and emotional self-determination. Trust and connection. The story emphasizes that human connection through kindness, empathy, and shared vulnerabilities. Transformative. Alex becomes a vehicle for Emily's healing and, potentially, her romantic awakening. Courage and self-discovery. The narrative highlights ongoing emotional courage. Running away was the first act. Facing uncertainty and making autonomous choices is the next, signaling that personal growth is continuous. Romantic potential. Romantic tension is carefully calibrated. It is present but understated, emphasizing emotional depth and maturity over superficial attraction. This makes the story suitable for adult audiences seeking meaningful romance. These themes are intertwined with character development, ensuring that emotional stakes remain high while maintaining narrative realism. Narrative pacing and structure Part 4 expertly manages pacing to create emotional pacing. Slower, reflective moments. Emily and Alex's conversation, combined with quiet reflection, allows the audience to process. The emotional stakes, juxtaposition of calm and tension. The loft's warmth contrasts with the external reality of Emily's fiancé contacting her. This creates layered tension, balancing relief with anticipation. Cliffhanger strategy. Ending with the phone message ensures the story does not feel complete, leaving room for future development while giving a satisfying emotional payoff for Part 4's intimacy. The pacing mirrors the character's emotional states, relief, hope, and tentative confidence tempered by uncertainty. Character development in part for Emily. She evolves from fear and vulnerability towards self-assuredness and cautious hope. She is aware of the challenges ahead but begins to trust herself and her ability to navigate complex emotions. This maturation makes her a compelling protagonist. Alex, his role solidifies as both a compassionate confidant and emerging romantic interest. His behavior demonstrates emotional intelligence, empathy, and patience, qualities that resonate with audiences and underscore the story's mature tone. Both characters are multidimensional and relatable, which strengthens the narrative's emotional impact. Psychological depth Part 4 delves into the psychology of decision-making, trust, and emotional risk. Emily faces cognitive dissonance between past obligations and current desires. Her emotional courage is highlighted by her willingness to consider new beginnings while confronting unresolved ties. Alex experiences protective instincts mixed with growing attachment. He is aware of potential complications, but focuses on emotional presence and support, illustrating a mature approach. two romantic and ethical dilemmas. This attention to psychological realism enhances audience empathy and engagement. Symbolism and imagery. Several symbolic elements enrich Part 4. The rain, now stopped, symbolizing the end of immediate chaos and the possibility of clarity. The fire represents warmth, security, and the emotional spark between Emily and Alex. The loft serves as a temporary haven, a place of reflection and intimacy, contrasting with the pressures of the outside world. The phone message, a symbolic reminder of reality, responsibility, and past entanglements, introducing narrative. Tension while emphasizing that emotional and romantic journeys are never linear. Part 3 marks a pivotal shift in the story from the public chaos of the streets and the initial encounter with Emily to a private, intimate space where both characters can begin to explore trust, vulnerability, and emotional connection in depth. This part is essential because it transforms the story from a suspenseful runaway bride scenario into a heartfelt exploration of emotional intimacy and the slow building of romance. Transition from chaos to shelter. The narrative begins. With the transition, Alex leads Emily from the rainy streets into a cozy loft, a safe and private environment. This physical movement mirrors their emotional journey, leaving the unpredictable storm outside and entering a controlled, warm, and intimate space signals the beginning of Emily's emotional grounding. The loft itself is symbolic, small, cozy, and filled with familiar, comforting details like books, soft lighting, and a fire. It's a stark contrast to the chaos Emily has just fled her wedding, societal expectations, and the public humiliation of running away. Here, she can lower her guard, and the audience witnesses the first stage of emotional repair and trust building. By placing them in this intimate environment, the story invites the audience to focus not on action, but on internal dialogue, subtle gestures, and emotional tension, which is the core of mature storytelling. Emily's emotional vulnerability. In Part 3, Emily begins to open up more fully, revealing the depth of her fear, shame, and loneliness. Her words, "I feel like my whole life just crashed," convey a raw honesty that is both relatable and heartbreaking. This moment allows the audience to empathize with her on multiple levels. Shame and social pressure. Emily is grappling with the weight of expectations, family, friends, and society, and the intense shame of running away. Self-doubt. She questions her own worth and ability to live authentically, reflecting a universal fear that many people experience when making life-changing decisions. Desperation for comfort. Her need to be physically and emotionally comforted by Alex illustrates that trust is earned slowly and that human connection can be a powerful balm. Her vulnerability is not portrayed as weakness, but as a brave act of honesty. This aligns with the story's theme that emotional courage, facing one's own truth, is as compelling and dramatic as any action sequence. Alex, as a protective and compassionate figure. Alex's behavior in this part solidifies him as a hero in the emotional sense. He is not flamboyant or extraordinary in the traditional romantic sense. Instead, he demonstrates empathy, patience, and emotional intelligence, qualities that are central to mature romance narratives. Physical presence. Alex's presence in the loft offering warmth, a blanket, and a quiet, non-judgmental space. Emily, with a tangible sense of security. Emotional presence. His gentle responses, careful words, and calm demeanor create an emotional anchor for Emily. This is the first real moment in the story where the audience sees him not just reacting to events, but actively supporting and nurturing someone else's emotional needs. This combination of physical and emotional protection fosters trust, which is crucial for the slow-burn romance the story is cultivating. Subtle romantic tension. Part 3 carefully introduces romantic tension without crossing into overt physical romance, which keeps the story classy, mature, and emotionally engaging. Several elements contribute to this tension: proximity and touch, Emily leaning on Alex. The brush of their hands and his protective gestures all create intimacy. Physical closeness signals a growing connection while maintaining subtlety and taste. Shared vulnerability, their emotional openness, Emily revealing her deepest fears. Alex responding with reassurance creates a sense of emotional closeness that is often more compelling than immediate physical romance. Unspoken emotions. The story emphasizes what is not said: glances, slight hesitations, and internal thoughts. This leaves the audience anticipating more, heightening engagement and emotional investment. This subtlety is particularly effective for storytelling channels targeting a mature audience because it focuses on the emotional arc rather than explicit romance, which aligns with the tone you requested. Psychological Realism Part 3 excels at exploring the psychological states of both characters, which makes the story feel authentic and relatable. Emily, her inner dialogue reveals guilt, fear, and relief. She is cautious, yet drawn to Alex, experiencing the conflict between independence and the need for connection. This creates a multi-layered character rather than a simple damsel in distress. Alex, internally, he is aware of his growing attachment and concern, but he balances it with rational thought, considering what's best for her without imposing himself. This demonstrates emotional maturity, a trait that deepens audience admiration and trust in him as a romantic figure. By showing both perspectives, the story creates empathy and emotional resonance, allowing viewers to feel both the tension and the tenderness of the moment. Themes explored in Part 3. Several central themes are developed further in this part. Trust and emotional safety. Emily begins to trust Alex, marking a turning point in her emotional journey. Trust is not given lightly, it is earned through consistent, thoughtful behavior, which Alex demonstrates. Healing through connection. The loft becomes a metaphorical safe space where Emily's emotional wounds can begin to heal. The story suggests that human connection can provide a profound sense of comfort and grounding, courage and self-discovery. Running away was her first act of courage. Staying in the loft and opening up to a stranger is the next. The story emphasizes that courage is ongoing, not a single moment of action. Slow-burning romance by prioritizing emotional intimacy over immediate physicality. The story emphasizes romantic tension built on understanding, empathy, and trust, which resonates with a mature audience. Pacing and narrative techniques. Part 3 uses pacing and narrative focus strategically. Slower, reflective pace. The narrative slows, mirroring the calm of the loft and the introspection of the characters. This allows the audience to absorb emotional subtleties, inner thoughts, and sensory details. The story emphasizes internal monologue, Alex's concern, Emily's fear and sensory experiences, warmth of the fire, smell of books, comfort of the blanket. This deepens immersion and emotional connection. Dialogue as emotional conduit. Every line of dialogue is laden with subtext. Alex's reassurances, Emily's confessions, and their small exchanges convey tension, relief, and subtle attraction without needing overt dramatization. Emotional arc. The emotional arc of Part 3 is powerful. Fear and uncertainty. Emily enters the loft anxious, drenched, and ashamed. Comfort and reassurance. Alex provides both physical warmth and emotional grounding. Vulnerability and trust. Emily opens up more fully, marking the start of an emotional bond. Subtle romantic awareness. Small gestures and shared silence create an undercurrent of attraction. This arc is crucial because it transforms the story from a dramatic scenario into a deeply emotional experience, which is the hallmark of storytelling aimed at a mature audience seeking heartfelt romance. Foreshadowing and suspense. Part 3 also subtly plants seeds for future tension and narrative development. Emily's growing trust hints at potential romantic complications later, both internal her feelings for Alex and external her past and the man she ran from. Alex's developing attachment foreshadows emotional stakes he will care deeply, which makes any future conflict more impactful. The loft as a safe space is temporary, hinting at inevitable decisions and challenges that will arise as Emily faces her reality. These elements keep the audience engaged while maintaining the story's gentle, emotionally driven pacing. Character relationships and dynamics. The loft scene deepens the emotional dynamic between Alex and Emily. Alex becomes a guardian figure without dominating her autonomy. His kindness is active but restrained, signaling respect and empathy. Emily's reliance on him is balanced by her emerging agency. She is not passive. She is actively choosing trust and emotional connection. Their bond grows organically from shared experience, vulnerability, and mutual understanding, making the romance credible and heartfelt. This careful balance is critical for storytelling targeting audiences in the US and Canada, where relatable, emotionally intelligent characters resonate strongly. Climactic moment and soft hook. The climax of Part 3 is emotional rather than physical. Emily rests on Alex's shoulder, wrapped in the blanket. Alex holds her hand, subtly conveying care and protection. The fire crackles, rain continues outside, and a fragile sense of peace settles between them. The soft hook for the next part is the implied tension. The world outside the loft has not disappeared. Emily still has responsibilities, obligations, and a fiancé searching for her. Meanwhile, Alex's involvement has deepened their emotional connection, creating stakes for both characters. Part 2 shifts the story from immediate tension into emotional intimacy and character revelation. While Part 1 set the stage introducing the characters, the dramatic, rain-soaked encounter, and the initial suspense, Part 2 deepens our understanding of Emily, her inner turmoil, and the growing connection with Alex. This is where the story starts to explore the heart of the narrative: vulnerability, trust, and the beginnings of emotional romance, setting an atmosphere after huddling under the cafe awning in Part 1. Alex takes Emily to a safe place, showing his instinctive protectiveness. The atmosphere in Part 2 is slightly calmer, yet still charged with tension. They are physically shielded from the storm, but the emotional storm within Emily is far from over. This juxtaposition, external calm versus internal chaos, creates a rich emotional canvas. Seattle's evening light, filtered through the rain, gives the scene a soft, intimate quality. The world outside continues with its indifferent bustle. But within this small space, Alex and Emily are isolated, highlighting the closeness that is forming. The rain, which symbolized chaos in Part 1, now becomes a backdrop that emphasizes shelter, warmth, and the intimacy of shared vulnerability. Emily's confession. The turning point of Part 2 is Emily's confession. Here, she explicitly reveals that she is a runaway bride, wearing a wedding dress and carrying the burden of fear, doubt, and guilt. Her voice trembles as she explains, "I was supposed to marry him today, but I can't. I don't love him. I don't even know if I love myself enough to pretend anymore." This line does multiple things narratively, reveals the conflict. It clarifies why she ran, giving the audience insight into her inner struggle. She is caught between societal expectations, family pressure, and her own emotional truth. Elise. Empathy. Emily's fear and confusion make her immediately relatable. Many people have experienced moments of doubt or the pressure to conform, and this taps into that universal emotional experience. Introduces psychological depth. She is not simply fleeing a man she doesn't love. She is fleeing the expectation of performance, pretending to be happy, pretending to be someone she is not. This adds layers to her character, making her both vulnerable and courageous. Alex's role and response. Alex's response is crucial. He does not judge. He does not panic. Instead, he acts with quiet empathy and protective instinct, saying, "I'll help you," and guiding her to shelter. This establishes his role not just as a witness, but as a supportive anchor. The first person who responds to her fear with compassion rather than judgment. His reactions are carefully written to balance realism and romantic tension. He is startled and cautious, but also instinctively drawn to help. This makes him relatable. The audience can imagine themselves as Alex, experiencing surprise, concern, and the slow realization that this woman is asking for trust. Dialogue and emotional subtext. Dialogue in Part 2 is minimal but meaningful. Phrases like "I don't know where to go" or "what to do," and Alex's calm assurances carry layers of emotional weight. Every line is a mixture of confession, reassurance, and emotional probing without overtly romanticizing the scene. This subtlety is what gives the story its mature, heartfelt tone. The repeated emphasis on trust is central here. Emily is literally and metaphorically placing herself in Alex's hands. Her vulnerability underlines the budding emotional bond which forms the foundation for the romance to come. By not rushing into physical or overtly romantic gestures, the story builds emotional tension, which is far more compelling for a mature storytelling audience. Themes of courage and vulnerability. Part 2 explores several key themes. Courage, Emily's. Running away is not an act of cowardice. It is a radical assertion of her truth. The story carefully frames this, making the audience admire her bravery while feeling the weight of her fear. Vulnerability. Vulnerability is presented as a form of strength. By confessing to Alex, Emily exposes herself emotionally, creating a deep connection that is the emotional heart of the story. Trust. Trust is central to both romance and suspense. The act of confiding in Alex, someone she barely knows, highlights her desperate need for connection and sets the stage for intimacy. Human compassion. Alex embodies empathy. His willingness to help someone in distress without judgment conveys the story's underlying message. Love and connection often start with human kindness. The subtle buildup of romantic tension, though. The story does not rush into romance. Part 2 carefully lays the groundwork for emotional intimacy. Consider the following. Physical proximity, even under the awning or later in a loft. Alex's closeness provides warmth, both literal and emotional. Shared secrets, confessions act as a bonding mechanism. Emily shares her deepest fear. Alex responds with support and understanding, which deepens their emotional connection. Emotional resonance. The story emphasizes small gestures. Alex's hand near hers. His calm tone, Emily leaning on him, which subtly signal attraction and trust, without becoming overtly romantic or physical. These elements work together to make the romance feel authentic, slow-burning, and emotionally charged, appealing to audiences who enjoy heartfelt, dramatic storytelling. Climactic and emotional tension. Part 2 ends with an important narrative tension. The audience has learned about Emily's inner turmoil and Alex's empathetic nature, but the stakes remain unresolved. Questions remain. Where will Emily go now? What consequences will she face for leaving her fiancé? How will Alex's involvement complicate both of their lives? These unanswered questions create a soft cliffhanger, encouraging the audience to continue while also deepening their investment in both characters. Narrative, structure, and pacing. From a structural perspective, Part 2 carefully balances dialogue, introspection, and action. Dialogue, Emily's confessions, and Alex's reassurances carry emotional weight and reveal character. Internal thoughts. Alex's reflections, his surprise, concern, and growing empathy allow the audience to connect deeply with his perspective. Pacing. The story slows slightly compared to Part 1, reflecting the emotional intimacy and the quiet tension of their encounter. This pacing allows the audience to absorb the depth of Emily's fear and the beginnings of their emotional bond. Character development. Part 2 is vital for character development. Emily evolves from a frightened, desperate runaway to someone who begins to trust a stranger. This is a pivotal step in her emotional journey. Alex is revealed as compassionate, patient, and emotionally intelligent. His ability to stay calm and empathetic under unexpected circumstances sets the tone for his role as a potential romantic partner. Both characters are emotionally rich and relatable, which is essential for engaging a mature audience. Emotional and psychological realism. The story emphasizes emotional realism over dramatized action. Emily's trembling, hesitation, and fear are portrayed authentically, and Alex's measured, supportive responses feel believable. This makes the emotional connection between them more compelling, allowing the audience to immerse themselves in their shared experience by focusing on subtle cues like Emily biting her lip, her tears, Alex's steady voice. The story conveys a wealth of unspoken emotion, which is more impactful than overt dramatics. The audience is invited to feel the characters' tension, hope, and growing trust intimately. Thematic Resonance Part 2 reinforces the story's central themes: escape and freedom. Emily's flight is not simply a physical escape, but an emotional liberation from expectations and fear. Compassion and connection. Alex's willingness to help illustrates how kindness can create profound emotional bonds. Self-discovery. Emily begins a journey of understanding herself, her desires, fears, and courage, which will continue in later parts. These themes resonate deeply with audiences seeking emotional and romantic storytelling that feels grounded. And heartfelt conclusion of Part 2, explanation in essence. Part 2 transforms the story from a dramatic, rain-soaked encounter into an emotionally charged, character-driven scene. It reveals the central conflict, Emily's runaway situation, deepens character development for both Emily and Alex, establishes emotional intimacy and trust, builds subtle romantic tension, leaves unresolved questions that sustain suspense, explores themes of courage, vulnerability, and human connection. The careful balance of dialogue, introspection, pacing, and atmosphere makes Part 2 emotionally rich and compelling, creating a solid foundation for the next parts, where the story will explore shelter, comfort, and the beginnings of a deeper romantic connection. Part 1 opens in downtown Seattle, a city known for its overcast skies and sudden showers. This setting is crucial. It immediately establishes a tone of unpredictability and emotional intensity. The rain serves as a metaphor for sudden disruption in life, hinting at the emotional storm about to enter Alex's quiet routine. Seattle streets, emptying as evening approaches, create a sense of isolation that makes the encounter feel both intimate and urgent. Alex Morgan, the protagonist, is introduced in a moment of ordinary life. He's 32 years old, owns a small bookstore, and appreciates calm after the bustling hours of work. This gives him depth as a character. He's grounded, thoughtful, and has a quiet sensitivity. The audience can relate to him. He's not a superhero or a millionaire. He's a regular man with a life of simple routines, which makes his eventual connection with Emily more believable and emotionally resonant. As Alex steps out into the rain, we see a contrast between the ordinary and the extraordinary. A man closing his shop and preparing for the quiet of the evening suddenly encounters someone in distress. This is a classic storytelling technique, placing a character in an everyday scenario before introducing a dramatic, inciting event. It makes the story more immersive because the audience can imagine themselves in Alex's shoes, witnessing something unexpected. Then comes Emily, the runaway bride. Her sudden appearance is dramatic, yet handled delicately. She is shivering, drenched, and terrified, which immediately evokes empathy. She is vulnerable, but also determined. Her whisper, "Please, help me," signals desperation, fear, and an urgent need for connection. This moment sets up her character arc. She is someone trapped by circumstance and expectation, seeking a way out, both physically and emotionally. The audience instantly feels protective of her, which is critical for a romantic, emotionally driven story. Her action slipping under Alex's jacket is symbolic on multiple levels. Literally, it's a physical act of seeking warmth and protection. Emotionally, it represents trust, a leap into the unknown, and the start of a bond with a stranger. The audience senses both the tension and intimacy in this moment. Alex's reaction, a mix of surprise and concern, mirrors how an ordinary person would react. This makes him relatable and grounds the story in realism. The dialogue in this scene is sparse but loaded with meaning. Emily's I can't go back. Not today, not now, immediately raises questions. Why can't she go back? What has driven her to run? The audience is pulled into suspense while simultaneously sensing the emotional weight of her decision. Alex's response, soft, caring, yet cautious, establish him as a protective, compassionate figure without making him overbearing. This balance is important. It creates romantic tension without rushing into fantasy-like scenarios. The cliffhanger at the end of part 1, Alex stepping closer, guiding her toward shelter, and realizing the seriousness of the situation sets the stage for deeper emotional development. It leaves the audience wondering, what happened to make her run? Who is she running from? Will Alex's involvement change her life or complicate his own? These questions create a natural hook, compelling the listener to continue. From a storytelling perspective, Part 1 performs several key functions, setting the scene. Seattle's rainy streets and the emptying downtown provide atmosphere and foreshadow emotional turbulence. Introducing main characters, Alex and Emily are clearly defined, relatable, and emotionally rich, with visible strengths, flaws, and vulnerabilities. Establishing conflict, Emily's running away introduces immediate external conflict, the mystery of the bride's disappearance and internal conflict, her emotional struggle, fear, and hesitation. Building romantic tension, physical proximity under the jacket. The exchange of words and shared vulnerability begin a slow emotional bond. Creating suspense, questions about Emily's past, the impending storm, and Alex's decisions keep the audience engaged. Delving further, the symbolism of rain and shelter is worth emphasizing. Rain often represents both cleansing and chaos. Emily is literally drenched, symbolizing her emotional state, overwhelmed, desperate, and exposed. Alex's jacket represents protection, safety, and warmth, hinting at the emotional support he will provide. This sets up the emotional core of the story. Two strangers meeting under extraordinary circumstances, forming a connection based on trust, care, and vulnerability. Moreover, the pacing in Part 1 is deliberately gradual, but tense. The story doesn't rush into romance or dramatics. Instead, it carefully builds the situation. Alex notices something unusual, hesitates, reacts with concern, and finally takes a protective action. This measured progression allows the audience to absorb emotional cues, visualize the scene, and empathize with both characters. The psychology of the characters is subtly explored. Emily's decision to run and immediately seek physical closeness to Alex demonstrates her need for emotional grounding and human connection. Alex's protective instinct and calm responses reveal both his empathy and reliability. T's character traits are important for later romantic development. The audience will root for their connection because it feels authentic. Finally, the emotional undertone of Part 1 is a mix of tension, curiosity, and gentle warmth. The story avoids melodrama, instead relying on subtle gestures, meaningful dialogue, and atmospheric description to evoke emotion. The audience is encouraged to feel suspense for Emily's predicament, admiration for Alex's kindness, and anticipation for what comes next. In short, Part 1 establishes the foundation of the entire story, a chance encounter that will evolve into emotional intimacy. Set against a dramatic backdrop, driven by authentic, relatable characters. The cliffhanger, the urgency of Emily's situation, and Alex's protective role creates a compelling reason to continue, promising emotional depth, romance, and suspense in the following parts.